and they are represented here as well. Collectively, we bring a whole value to society as they approach efforts to support democracy around the world. This investment in democracy is both a political and a moral imperative for the United States. Weak government and systematic corruption breed political and economic instability which threaten our own security and well-being, never mind the opportunities for people around the world that are denied. By contrast, peaceful resolution of conflict, political stability, and economic prosperity are byproducts of pluralism, the rule of law, respect for human rights, a robust civil society, an independent media. That's key to the success of spreading democracy around the world, and NED helps make that possible. This evening, it's my great pleasure to share with you the services of 4 organizations who work daily to foster democracy in the most difficult environments around the world and to shine a spotlight on the gross and systematic violation of human rights. And I'm going to talk specifically about North Korea. The North Korean regime has not done anything to foster support for their people or to create opportunities for them to have a government by, for them. The brave and creative individuals who lead the organizations that we will recognize this evening contribute much to making a difference that soon will be realized as the good for all people in North Korea and the Korean Peninsula. Some of those here are South Korean activists helping to support democracy in North Korea. We also have 2 people who defected from North Korea. With great bravery and significant risk, they not only defected from North Korea, they worked hard to bring opportunity to the people of North Korea. They constantly refine their efforts to find opportunities to reach and support North Korean defectors, to broadcast outside news to the people inside North Korea, and to document the regime's crimes against humanity, and to teach the world about the gross violation of rights in North Korea. Before we proceed to the award ceremony, we will be hearing from other champions of democracy. Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi will be joining us, we think, but we do have another member of Congress who will be speaking to us, and he is a remarkable leader. His name is Ed Royce. Chairman Royce is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House. He came to Congress 26 years ago, and he has made a difference both as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, but in his leadership for the caucus. And he was an active rank and file member, an active leader, and an active chairman. Congressman Royce has given countless speeches and held multiple hearings and sponsored numerous bills to give a voice to the people suffering in places that don't have the chance to have a government that reflects them. He stands up to call attention to those who are being treated brutally by their governments, and he's been a particular outspoken critic of what has been happening in North Korea. His voice will sorely be missed when he leaves Congress at the end of this year. But I do want to call Chairman Royce to come and give us some remarks. Chairman Royce.
Well, thank you, Secretary Card. I'm very glad you're involved in this effort. And I must say, as an enthusiast and friend of Carl Gershman's for many years, many years, over a generation, I deeply appreciate not only the important contribution for human freedom he makes, but for all of you, each of you, that continue to support this effort of the National Endowment for Democracy. I got to tell you, it's one of the most important things in terms of human freedom that anybody could dedicate their life to. And I also want to share with you that when it comes to the key decisions, the judgment, not just in terms of Eastern Europe or in terms of, Asia, I'm just thinking for a moment about this decision on North Korea. The information from the National Endowment for Democracy that was given to me to convince us to have a hearing, and there at that hearing to hear Seong-ho, the defector who left London. That was their concept, to bring him here to the United States. But once here, they made sure that not only did he have the opportunity to speak to the American people through C-SPAN on what we did in Congress, but to set up a way for him to communicate with media across the United States. How much more we have learned as a people here and internationally as a result of what the NED does, but how much more the people inside North Korea have learned, because those thumb drives and shortwave radio broadcasts, they reach people the same way they reached people in Eastern Europe. There is one organization that really has a handle, in my view, on how you get the truth out, how you get the information out there around the world. And they work against tremendous odds. If you look at the billions of dollars that authoritarian regimes spend around the world to put out disinformation, it is you here today that help them get the truth out. And most importantly, to get the truth out to the people who most need to hear from the outside world, the people who are most oppressed, the people who are, receiving disinformation day in, day out. I think it's important also that the four organizations that they're recognizing tonight for their 2018 NED Democracy Award, the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights, the Now Action and Unity for Human Rights, the Transitional Justice Working Group, the Unification Media Group, to our friends, 안녕하세요. And let me say, as someone who has been in North Korea only once, but I will tell you, what I saw there was deeply disturbing. But my conversations in South Korea over my many trips with defectors who told me the personal experiences, who told me the tragedies of what they had seen, that still is with me. The young woman who told me that in the Gulag, she had survived it, but while there, she did not even have the right to smile. And beyond the 120,000 people, individuals who can be sent there for 3 generations because of the perceived crime of one individual. Besides that house of horrors, besides that which so moved the conscience of the UN, that the UN Human Rights Commission found that the crimes committed by this regime are so egregious that, in our words, they shock the conscience of humanity. That's the kind of reaction one gets when we hear the personal stories. That's the human reaction to this kind of indignity. And that's why it's so important that the National Endowment for Democracy continue this effort, because there are truly no parallels in the modern world that I can think of the magnitude of the crimes there. Because you think about the lack of rights beyond just the gulag for the average person in North Korea. And it is so bleak when you have these conversations about the conditions. So it's critical. It's critical also that we continue the efforts on the shortwave broadcasts, on the thumb drives, get them into the country. It's critical that you continue your efforts, those of you here, and this is why I'm glad Secretary Card is taking such a prominent role. You need to do everything you can do, but also everything you can do to recruit your friends who think like you, that the future of humanity matters. Recruit them into supporting this effort. I think about what one sees in North Korea, where elites live in luxury, relative luxury, while millions of people literally starve. I asked Wang Jung-yap, the former propaganda minister, after he defected years ago, how many people starved to death? He said, no, how many were starved to death? They weren't a priority. Our weapon system was the priority. I said, well, how many? We say 2 million. He says, no, it wasn't 2 million. He says it was 1.9 million people. 1.9 million souls were starved to death by the regime who did not deliver food in those no-go areas. So your efforts are already putting pressure on the regime. Information is getting in. We have to accelerate this. And as you know, we in the House and in the Senate have passed legislation to reauthorize the North Korean Human Rights Act. This bill continues our broadcast. It updates our efforts to include more modern technology to spread outside information. And while we should not disregard diplomacy, the reality in the long term is that this regime will never really be at peace with its own people or neighbors or us unless it changes its ways. So I thank the National Endowment for Democracy for some of the most important work that goes on this planet. And I especially want to just take a moment to thank Carl personally for his lifetime's dedication to this cause. Thank you, Carl.
We're very privileged to have Leader Pelosi with us. Leader Pelosi has been a leader for democracy for a very, very long time, a courageous leader. She has helped the National Endowment for Democracy. She's attended this event most times that it happens, and we're very grateful for the support that she gives. She has helped highlight the call to action around the world, and she's given resources such that the National Endowment for Democracy, she and her colleagues in Congress, have made it possible for the National Endowment for Democracy to truly spread the freedom of democracy by planting seeds for democracy at places that we are almost afraid to go to, but NED finds a way to get there thanks to the help of our partners and our core partners, the NDI, IRI, Solidarity, and the Institute for Innovation. So, Leader Pelosi, would you please come up, and thank you very much for joining us again.
Good evening, everyone. It's always an honor to be here. It's a special treat this evening to be introduced by Andy Card, Mr. Secretary, a member of the political scene in Massachusetts before he became the Chief of Staff to President George Herbert Walker Bush. What a wonderful president he was, and we're so proud that he's still thriving in Maine now for the summer. But Andy, you know how much high regard I have for you, so sometimes they'll say, don't say how much regard you have for me, because I was the chief of staff to a Republican president, but Andy commanded respect across the aisle. Thank you, Andy, for your leadership, and it's very exciting for all of us that you're now the chairman of the National Endowment for Democracy. It's wonderful to be here, of course, with Carl Gershman. Endless compassion, endless understanding of our challenge to respect the dignity and worth of every person. Mr. Chairman, your words were very moving. Mr. Chairman, it's an honor to be here with you. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee, and you as well. Our colleagues will be coming and going, I know, in the course of the evening. I want to take up a little bit where our distinguished chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Royce, the path that he was going down. There are very few of us in Congress who've ever been to North Korea, to Pyongyang, not to Bum-Jin, but to Pyongyang. And I told someone today that when I was there, it was following a trip that I had made in other places in the world as a senior member on the Intelligence Committee, but also, Mr. Chairman, as an appropriator to visit places where we had cooperated in terms of foreign assistance to help people alleviate poverty, eradicate disease, etc. And I said, I visited some of the poorest places in the world, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, all in the Caribbean, all over Haiti, all over the world. I've seen the most sad poverty, to the point where I would say, God, where are you? Turn your face here. See your creation. These people need help. But what I told this person today was that I never saw anything that struck me so than the poverty of spirit that I saw in North Korea. The brainwashing, the whole situation, as you said, Mr. Chairman. I say that the diplomats, they must travel abroad. They see how other people live. And yet, when we saw the people in Pyongyang, the blank faces, the brainwashing that went on, the poverty of spirit exceeded any poverty that I had seen any place in the world. And never forgetting that, understanding how important these awards are this evening to these very special guests. It is, wherever individuals live under tyranny, NED has worked on the side of freedom. Wherever the voices of the people have been silenced, NED has advanced the cause of democracy. And wherever men and women suffer pain and persecution, the National Endowment for Democracy has honored the dignity and worth of every person. For 35 years, as many of you know, National Endowment for Democracy has embodied our nation's core values and our belief in the strength and power of democracy and freedom to build a better future for all. Tonight, as you know, we recognize the remarkable efforts of those dedicated to making human rights a reality in North Korea. And though we all believe in diplomacy and are hopeful about the progress of the negotiations that President Trump is engaged in, we do have to recognize that millions of North Koreans endure hunger, imprisonment, and torture to satisfy the tyrannical whims of Kim Jong-un. When I was there, people were starving. This is a number of years ago, and the people who were our host, the host of the Foreign Affairs Committee. They told us in the middle of the day that they had to leave us for a while because they had to go find food for their families. These were professionals in the Foreign Affairs office. They had to go find food. People were eating grass and leaves, and it was awful. And self-reliance was their motto. I can't say it in Korean. Self-reliance. Self-reliance, and they could not feed their people. They would get shot if they just took one corn on the cob, one husk of corn. The horrors suffered by those living under this oppressive regime are a stain on the conscience of the world. This is one of the last of the really closed societies. I mean, we see human rights violations many places, but this closed place. But the perseverance of the honorees tonight inspires us in our mission to champion the inherent dignity of every person. And the administration continues to talk with Kim Jong-un. We must seize this moment and demand that human rights remain central to the negotiations. We cannot rest until we know we have done everything in our power to advance the rights abroad that we cherish so deeply at home. I do believe that we lose all moral authority to talk about human rights anywhere if we don't talk about human rights everywhere, especially when we're in the midst of a negotiation. We're supposed to protect our country. Our national security pillars are about stopping the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, advancing our economy, and advancing our values. And these values are so tested at times when diplomacy or commerce enter the scene. And so we must recommit to protecting fundamental freedoms, respect for the rule of law, freedom from political persecution in North Korea this evening and around the world. So I congratulate tonight's honorees and thank you for your tireless work and leadership in the vital mission. That would be the Citizens Alliance for North Korea Human Rights, Now Action and Unity for Human Rights, the Transitional Justice Working Group, and Unification Media Group. I know our colleague, Chairman McCall, will be recognizing our honorees. I see we've been joined by Congressman Castro. This is one place where bipartisanship reigns supreme, the sharing that we have in the respect for the dignity and worth of every person. So we thank Carl Gershman for his leadership for so very many years. Seems boundless, never burns out, a boundless source of energy in this fight for human rights across the world. And we welcome the great leadership of Secretary Andy Card. Thank you for sharing your leadership, your energy, your time, your enthusiasm. And I know you have many calls on it with the National Endowment for Democracy. Thank you all so much for the ability to share a few thoughts with you.
All right, thank you, Leader Pelosi, and thank you, Chairman Royce. It was wonderful to have you here. Next, we're going to present the awards. But before we do, I want to make sure, before I call on the people that will actually present the awards, I'd like to share a video with you about each one of the award winners. I'll show the video just before we introduce the member of Congress that will present the award. So if you please bear with me, I would love to have them show the first award winners, which is the New Unity and Action for Human Rights. So please pay attention to the video screens.
한국 길거리 돌아다니다 보면은 어떤 게 가장 인상적인가요?
그냥 먹을 게 너무 많아요. 그리고 무료로 이렇게 시식하는 것도 많고.
여성인 현실에서 이들을 수감하기 위한 여성 전용 교도소를 신설하기도 하였다. 그것을 나온 탈북에서
그러다 보니까 죽고 사는 것은 그냥 너무 쉽다?
We've had wonderful introductory remarks from the chairman and from Leader Pelosi. I would thank Chairman Royce in particular for the time that he has given us to talk about these issues. But next, I would like to introduce Chairman McCall. Chairman McCall is going to come to the stage to present the first award. Currently, he's the chairman of the House Security Committee. Congressman McCall also serves as a senior member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. He is a powerful voice in the national security policy community and possesses a very clear understanding of the most significant challenges that we have in democracy and spreading it around the world. And he knows what will ultimately lead to peace is the full practice of democracy. So I am happy to introduce Chairman Michael McCall, and he's going to present the first Democracy Award to the New Unity and Action for Human Rights.
Thank you, Secretary Card, for that kind introduction. Thank you for your service to our country, and Carl, thank you. And I want to, it's just a great honor to be here with NED and so many champions of democracy. This evening, we do come together to honor some of the world's bravest and most relentless advocates for freedom. Every single day, they provide a voice for people who don't have one. And as I stand here, I cannot think of a nation that needs these voices more than the people of North Korea. For 70 years, they have suffered under the oppressive rule of the Kim dynasty. This brutal dictatorship has turned North Korea into a desolate prison for millions of people. They are serving a life sentence, but have committed no crime. And unfortunately, we know North Korea's past is filled with human rights abuses, labor camps, starvation, and war. But thankfully, we have courageous individuals who are fighting to win North Korea's future. They wish to turn their country into a place that knows liberty, democracy, prosperity, and peace. Few people understand this struggle more than those at Now Action and Unity for Human Rights. Since 2010, this group has been spearheading awareness campaigns on human rights abuses, cultural exchanges, and reunification. They have also supported rescue operations for North Korean refugees. This group understands that freedom is a flame that burns brightly, even in the darkest of times, and that democracy is a cause always worth fighting for. So by accepting today's award on behalf of the Now Action and United for Human Rights are Shi-woo and Seong-ho. Both of these men defected from North Korea years ago, but they haven't forgotten the 26 million people still trapped inside. They have dedicated their lives to freeing their fellow countrymen. Through human rights symposiums, cultural events, assistance for refugees, and other work, they are fighting to make North Korea a better place. Many of you may remember Seong-ho standing in the gallery during the State of the Union address, waving his crutches proudly. Everyone in the room, including myself, stood and cheered. That night, he won the applause of all those in the House chamber, but he also won the cause in the hearts of the American people. These two gentlemen are fighting for freedom. They set a great example for patriots all around the world. They embody the spirit of democracy wherever they go. So I'm very proud to welcome them onto the stage and stand by their side. So please join me in congratulating Shi-woo and Seong-ho.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Seong-ho. I am a North Korean defector and human rights activist. Thank you, President Carl Gershman and NED. It's a great honor for Lao to receive this award. We are here today because many people have supported our passion for North Korea human rights. I want to thank you, our supporters and members, for believing in us and our work. From victims, we became activists. We will keep working until North Korea has human rights and democracy. We thank you for your trust and support. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Now I'd ask you to pay attention to the video screens again. We'll see a video about the Unification Media Group.
어머니 수령님을 정중히 안치한
Chairman McCall is from Texas. Our next congressman is also from Texas. Republican and Democrat, so that shows how bipartisan we are, how this is everyone's cause. Representative Joaquin Castro, I'd like to have you come forward. He was elected to Congress 6 years ago. He quickly established himself as a leader on foreign policy issues. He consistently works in a bipartisan manner to bring important national security and foreign policy issues to the forefront and to support activities from Latin America to Asia. He's been a great friend to the National Endowment for Democracy, but more significantly, he has been a champion of people's right to participate in the political process. So we're honored to introduce Representative Joaquin Castro to present the award to the United Media Group.
Good evening. It's great to be here with everybody. Thank you, Andrew, for that kind introduction and for your leadership at the National Endowment for Democracy. My name is Joaquin Castro, and I represent a wonderful part of Texas, the city of San Antonio, in the United States Congress. And I'm honored to be here with all of you today, invited by Carl and the National Endowment for Democracy to present the Democracy Award to the Unification Media Group. The National Endowment for Democracy is an invaluable institution that continually reminds us the duty we have as the United States to stand up for democracy around the world and also right here at home. We live in a time when authoritarian regimes feel new vigor and have rolled back hard-won gains toward democracy that we've achieved over the last few decades. At times, we may feel helpless watching yet another political party banned, an election canceled, an independent media outlet shuttered, and we may believe the light of democracy is fading abroad and at times even at home. But we must not lose hope and must support institutions like the National Endowment for Democracy that continue to champion the aspirations of peoples around the world. The endowment's work is a reminder that people all over the world also share the desire for democracy and freedom that Americans value so much. The Unification Media Group's work in North Korea, bringing credible information into a country that has attempted to stamp out all contact with the outside world, is absolutely vital. This work challenges the pervasive and pernicious goals of the North Korean regime. The work also challenges Pyongyang's desperate measures taken to keep residents of North Korea uninformed and unquestioning of that regime. I imagine one day a Korean peninsula united in freedom and prosperity, where artificial barriers do not tear families apart and where information flows freely. This will be hard work and it will be a slow process, but it must begin somewhere. I commend Kwang Bak Lee, Sung Young Lee, and the Unification Media Group for advancing that process. As President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un met this week in Singapore, we're potentially at a time of significant transformation on the Korean Peninsula. The United States must not lose track of our core values as we organize towards a better future for that region. Thank you again for inviting me here to present, and congratulations on this award.
I'm sorry. The Unification Media Group has worked for over 10 years. Sorry. To provide the North Korean people with information and news that their regime does not. We owe everything to NED, especially Carl Grossman and Win-Wee. They gave us the chance to begin this work. And never let us give up despite many difficulties along the way. Thank you to American people and government for supporting human rights and freedom around the world. Unification Media Group is so honored to receive this award today. We will do everything we can until all those Korean peoples can hear Unification Media Group's broadcast and read their Yankees articles. Thank you so much for being here today, to everyone. Thank you.
And now a video about the work of the Transitional Justice Working Group. And now to present the award to the Transitional Justice Working Group is Congressman Peter Roskam, a Republican of Illinois. Congressman Roskam's membership on the board of the National Endowment for Democracy, and there are representatives from Congress on our board from both parties, and they work very, very well together. That membership that he provides is evidence of his vision for a more prosperous and democratic world order. Additionally, Congress Roskam serves as the co-chair of the House Democracy Partnership, an organization within Congress that is dedicated to promoting responsive, effective government by strengthening institutions and legislatures in emerging democracies. Please welcome Congressman Peter Roskam to present the Democracy Award.
Well, what an honor it is to be here this evening and to bear witness to those who have borne witness. By comparison, and I think I'm joined by many, many others, when you hear these stories, you realize the great benefit that we have all received, those of us who've been born in the United States, and we've had a benefit of a legacy of democracy that has been passed from one generation to another, and yet we're in the presence of people who have suffered greatly. And out of that suffering, they've made a decision, and that is to try and redeem that suffering and turn it into something good, to redeem loss and make it powerful. The winners of the Democracy Award tonight that we just saw the short video clip of, Transitional Justice Working Group, are doing the hard work of documenting crimes that the world knows is going on, but with less and less specificity about what is happening, how it's happening, and where it's happening. And as the slow roll of justice comes towards North Korea, the slow roll of justice always comes, it's going to be this group that's going to be ready with the documentation, the mapping, the interviews, the investigations, and so forth that will put it in good stead as North Korea tries to reconcile its conduct, that is the Kim Jong-un regime, with the rest of the world, and ultimately with their people. So it's a real privilege for me to bring to your attention both Hubert Lee and Se-Hyuk-oh, who have done this work as co-founders of the organization. And like others who you've heard from tonight, Se-Hyuk-oh is a defector and a survivor. So ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome to the stage the winners of the 2018 Democracy Award, Transitional Justice Working Group. Gentlemen.
Thank you again, Congressman Roskam. Esteemed guests and friends, we tend to think that the truth is self-evident and that it tells for itself. However, when it comes to human rights abuses, it is not what we know, but what we can prove. Without proper documentation, it'll be as if nothing happened. All crimes leave evidence. However, if crime scenes are not identified and are not secured, important evidence may easily go missing. Perpetrators may fear their judgment day. However, if they believe they are just doing their jobs and are left unaware that their acts are documented in detail, they would feel no need to change their course of action. We will not stop, we cannot stop this documentation work because we are motivated by the promises
we make to those who lost their families, friends, and other loved ones. We promise once again we will continue our work for change. Truly, thank you.
Finally, we have a video about the Citizens Alliance for Human Rights in North Korea. We're fortunate to have Representative Stephanie Murphy with us, a Democrat from Florida. Thank you very much for being here. While this is her first term in Congress, Representative Murphy has established herself as a leading voice on foreign policy and national security. She has been a vocal advocate for human rights in North Korea and co-sponsored the North Korean Human Rights Reauthorization Act of 2017. I'm happy to introduce her to you, Congressman Stephanie Murphy, and we are very grateful for your presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Stephanie Murphy, and I represent Florida's 7th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. I'm honored to be here this evening as the National Endowment of Democracy presents awards to 4 organizations whose difficult and often dangerous mission is to promote human rights and human dignity inside North Korea and among North Korean refugees who have fled the country. Being here is personally important to me because I'm also a refugee. In the late 1970s, my parents faced persecution by communist government that had come into power in Vietnam. My brother was 8 years old, and I was just a baby at that time. And my parents worried about our futures. They didn't want their children to grow up under an oppressive government that didn't respect human rights. They didn't want us to live in a place where we couldn't be safe, where they wanted us to live in a place where we would have freedom and dignity and where we could have the opportunity for a better life. And they didn't think that was possible in Vietnam. And so my parents made the very difficult decision to flee Vietnam by boat. By attempting to escape, my parents took a tremendous risk. But they had decided that it was better for our family to die together in search of light than to live in darkness in Vietnam. My family was fortunate. We survived the journey with the help of the U.S. Navy, reached the safety of a Malaysian refugee camp, and ultimately made the passage to the United States, where we became proud citizens. I cherish the freedoms I have as an American, And yet I'm saddened that we're in the midst of a political moment in this country where too many public officials use language that dehumanizes immigrants, that casts suspicions on refugees, and that suggests that we're stepping back from our proud tradition of defending democratic values and human rights around the globe. And that's why I'm grateful to the organizations that we recognize tonight, whose mission is to fight for human dignity and human freedom for the North Korean people. The members of these organizations have devoted their lives to serving others. They bestow generosity and grace upon desperate people. They shine a light on the darkest parts of our world. And they fight for justice for millions of North Korean citizens who have only known oppression and deprivation. They refuse to let the world forget that these men, women, and children exist, that they have names, that they have hopes and dreams, and above all, that they matter. These organizations make a simple appeal to American officials like me. They ask us to remain faithful to our nation's founding creed, which is that every human being, wherever they live, is endowed with certain fundamental freedoms that no government has the right to deny. So tonight, I have the honor of awarding the 2018 Democracy Award to one of these remarkable organizations, the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights. Founded in Seoul in 1996, it is the world's oldest NGO devoted entirely to the advancement of North Korean human rights. Through its work organizing educational conferences and advocacy campaigns, the Citizens Alliance has exposed human rights violations in North Korea, amplified the voices of victims, and garnered international support for UN efforts to hold the North Korean government accountable for its actions. The organization also runs programs to educate and empower North Korean refugees who have resettled in South Korea. So please, join me in congratulating the Citizens Alliance and its chairman, Bum-Jin Park, for receiving this well-deserved award and for everything it does on behalf of the North Korean people.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a very special honor for us to receive this Democracy Award for the second time. In 1999, the support from Carl Grossman and NED enabled us to advocate for the North Korean human rights in the international arena. It was a time of darkness for women, children, and political prisoners in North Korea. We began as a lone cry in the wilderness. Now it became a mighty thunder, echoing around the world in United Nations and the consciousness of humanity. Thank you all again for your enduring support. Thank you.
The National Endowment for Democracy was a vision that President Reagan had, and it took strong leadership that ended up creating virtually unanimous bipartisan support from Congress to give us the National Endowment for Democracy. The leadership of the National Endowment for Democracy has been provided by Carl Gershman. He has done it consistently, with passion, and a great invitation for us all to be involved, but he has also traveled the world, motivating others to take up the charge so that all people could have governments that were theirs. We are blessed to have a democracy in the United States. It's the envy of the world. We're doubly blessed to have someone like Carl Gershman, who is trying to spread that to everyone in the world. Carl Gershman.
Thank you, Andy, and it's just wonderful to have you as the chair of NED. Before Congresswoman Murphy leaves, I just want to let her know that she was terrific and your remarks were very moving. Thank you very much. And all the other members. I want to, even though Ed Royce has left, I want it to be known that he presented a Democracy Award 20 years ago to the Transition Monitoring Group in Nigeria. He has been a leader in the struggle in the Congress to advance human rights, and he's going to be retiring, and he's somebody we're really going to miss. I also want to just take this opportunity to thank all the donors who made this event possible. Their names are all listed in the program, and I want to thank them very deeply for their support. And I want to finally thank our staff for all the hard work they did in putting on this event, and especially Lynn Lee has already gotten a lot of recognition, but she oversees, in addition to doing work on this program, she oversees the development of our grants program in North Korea. And the 4 organizations that have been honored tonight represent 4 categories of support for human rights in North Korea. There are about 17 different grants, 9 defector organizations, and that's one of the categories, the other being transitional justice. You have the Unification Media Group, which is part of the effort to break down the information blockade in North Korea. And then, of course, you have the Citizens Alliance, which really started all this and put the issue on the international agenda. And I really would request our friends from the Citizens Alliance to give our warmest and deepest personal greetings to Reverend Benjamin Yoon, who is really the father of the movement for human rights in North Korea. I know he's not well, but he's somebody we love very, very deeply, and I want you to know that and let him know that. This award ceremony tonight is the culmination of 20 years of steady and steadily expanding work that the NED has done in support of human rights in North Korea. We've seen a great deal of change during this period. I think this is very, very important to emphasize. The international community is far more aware than ever before of the horrendous human rights abuses that are taking place in North Korea, including the gulag of prison camps where hundreds of thousands of North Koreans have died during the last 7 decades. And I want to note, when we had the first conference that was mentioned in 1999, I gave a talk there called Ending the Silence, because there was complete silence about North Korea until the Citizens Alliance started with its work in 1999. The information blockade imposed by the regime to keep the North Korean people totally isolated has gradually broken down. The state distribution system has collapsed, and independent markets have emerged. What we are seeing now is the steady erosion of the North Korean totalitarian system. There are now also more than 30,000 North Korean defectors who have been able to leave North Korea since the famine in the late 1990s. People like Seong-ho and Sung-Ju Lee, who are remarkable people. They spoke at our conference this morning. They told their personal stories, extremely moving, and they're a link to the people inside North Korea and a sign of the human potential. And I said this morning, a sign of the human potential that will be unleashed, in my view, when the closed system of North Korea opens up, as it inevitably will. There is some concern among the activists we support that the focus on the nuclear issue today will reduce pressure for human rights in North Korea and maybe even reduce support for the kind of work that is being done by the organizations that we have honored this evening. I want to assure our friends that NED's support is solid, that it enjoys bipartisan support in the Congress, as you saw tonight, and that we consider this work today, the day after the summit, to be more important than ever before. There is simply no way that real peace on the Korean Peninsula can be achieved until North Korea becomes a more open society. Respect for human rights is not a side issue. It is the key for any lasting peace. So let us look to the future with hope that the efforts of the dedicated activists that we've honored tonight will bear fruit, and that the long-suffering people of North Korea will experience a new dawn of freedom. Thank you.
Again, thank you all very much. Those of you who are on the board of the National Endowment for Democracy, thank you for making it possible for us to do the work we do. Those of you who serve in Congress, thank you for giving the resources to allow us to do the work. Those who are partners in our core relationships of NDI, IRI, Solidarity, and the Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much. With that, thank you for attending, and please go forth and help spread the opportunity for everyone to participate in democracy, including our own. Thank you.